would be the next verse.
All right.
But I will establish my covenant with you. You will come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. From everything living, from each kind of living being, you are to bring two into the ark to keep them alive with you. They are to be male and female. Of each kind of bird, each kind of livestock, and each kind of animal creeping on the ground, two are to come to you so that you can be kept alive. So they can be kept alive, Also take from all the kinds of food that are eaten and collect it for yourself. It is to be food for you and for them. This is what Noach did. He did all that God ordered him to do.
All right. Now let's go ahead and read the next chapter, and then we're gonna discuss. So who would like to read the next chapter for us?
I'll read it. Then Yahweh said to Noah, come into the ark, you and all your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. You shall take with you 7 each of every clean animal, a male and female, 2 each of animals that are unclean, a male and female. Also 7 each of birds of the air, male and female, to keep the species alive on the face of all the earth. For after 7 more days I will cause it to rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and I will destroy from the face of the earth all living things that I have made. And Noah did according to all that Yahweh commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters were on the earth. So Noah with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives went into the ark because of the waters of the flood, of clean animals, of animals that are unclean, of birds, of everything that creeps on the earth. 2 by 2 went into the ark of Noah, and male and female, as Yahweh had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were on the earth in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month. On that day, all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, the windows of heaven were opened, and the rain was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and Noah's son, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons, then entered the ark. They and every beast after its kind, all cattle after their kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, every bird of every sort. And they went into the ark to Noah 2 by 2 of all flesh, in which is the breath of life. So those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in, as God had commanded, and Yahweh shut him in. Now the flood was on the earth 40 days. The waters increased and lifted up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and greatly increased on the earth, and the ark moved about on the surface of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly on the earth, and all the high hills under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed 15 cubits upward, and mountains were opened, and all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds and cattle and beasts and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of the spirit of life. All that was on the dry land died. So he destroyed all living things which were on the face of the ground, both man and cattle, creeping thing and bird of the air. They were destroyed from the earth. Only Noah and those who were with him in the ark remained alive, and the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days.
All right. Now, I'm going to do something a little different than I've done in previous years when I've done this Torah portion. I'm going to focus on just a little bit. Normally, we've talked about the shadow. We've talked about all sorts of things. But to me, there is a message here that is so apropos for today that we're going to dig really deeply into the names. Why would you say that? And Shabbat Shalom to Carlos and Jackie and Jerry and Joe and Janie and everyone else in the room. Okay, there's something prophetic in a name. You know, a Hebrew name can have good and bad. You have both sides, which we all understand that. But to me, this Torah portion, it officially begins in Genesis 6, verse 9. But I think we have to go back because there's a connection between last week's Torah portion and this one. And where do we go back? If we're going to be studying the prophetic significance of the names, we've got to go back to where those names begin. And so let's do that with Genesis 5:32, with Bereshit 5:32. And it says, and Noach was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Noah begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, we do understand that's not in chronological order, right? Does everybody understand that? Do you know that? Shem is actually the second born. Japheth is the firstborn, and Ham is the youngest. But why does Yah change the order? For a reason, right? For a reason, and we may get to that. But we've got to understand the Hebrew language to see this message, because when you see this message and you understand your job as a believer, it hasn't changed. What Yah is asking of us really hasn't changed. And so let's start with looking at Noach. Now, in your notes, I gave you the chiastic structure and some other things, but we're running a few minutes behind. So if we may go back that direction, but right now we're going to hit it straight on so we can get there with it. Hey, Joe, it's good to see you. So here we have Noach. Now, how many of you are familiar with Strong's and the Hebrew names? Everybody here, right? What about the Hebrew alphabet? Okay. So we're going to be looking at that so we can see what it means, because every letter as well as every name has a meaning to it. So we see Noach, which generally everybody, what does that mean? We have all learned for a long time. It means rest. And that is the simple meaning of Noah. But it is much more than that. It can be the resting place. And this is from Eddie and Tammy, who are probably online with us, which is Nuach, which is 5117, to rest. And which they gave us Genesis 8:4, and the ark rested in the 7th month and on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat. So it can also be rendered comfort as well. But when you look at the Hebrew, it's far more powerful because there's a causative nature to this name. Noah was caused to do something. He was caused to do something, which to bring about this rest. It didn't just happen. Noah's here, there's rest. There was something that happened within that. And we can actually understand the rest that's being alluded to. I mean, we may say, well, that's the entrance to the ark. They got to the ark and they were free of the chaos and of the whole world, which that's true. But that is a very basic meaning, because something had to happen. Something had to happen in the telling of this story so that we could have a shadow picture of our Messiah, because Noah is in and of himself a shadow picture of Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay. Did Yeshua HaMashiach, was there something he had to do, or could he just show up in the scene? Well, he's Yahweh, so he could just officially show up on the scene, but there was actually something that happened that he's done. So Noah caused something to happen. So let's look at the letters. Now the Nun, everybody, you're familiar with your Nun? It's a connector, right? But it is more than that, because we've always learned that Nun is also, does anybody remember?
The seed of life.
The seed of life. If you look at it in the paleo, it resembles the male seed, and it's the seed of life. And I want to tell you something. The word is about two seed lines. The battle is between two seed lines. It's between Hasatan's and Yahweh's. And that hasn't changed. The lines are being drawn in the sand more evidently and more clearly than they ever have been, at least in recent history, of who belongs in which camp. Period. And this is what this is. Noah, when we're looking at this Torah portion, we're going to see a battle of the seed line. And we see that in probably much every Torah portion. It's a battle of the seed line. So anyway, so we have this Nun, and we've got that under our belt now. But you also have the het, and a het is a fence, right? A fence, like a border or a country or a boundary, as in a protected place. Because why do you fence something off?
You're separating.
Separating it, protecting it. It's yours, right? So here we have in his name a seed and a border and a fence. When you put together, it's sort of like this new beginning that comes with these two letters, and it originates out of something that was once what? Chaos. Back in Bereshit, at the beginning, we saw life emerge out of what was once chaos. Okay. And we have that same thing. How many of you would call it chaos, what was happening in the earth in Noah's day?
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine being we think that in the presence of the evil that we live in now, it's hard to take. But imagine if it was so much worse, where every being except for 8 had been so corrupted that there was nothing left. The evil had to be, my thoughts are, how did Noah tolerate that? And it had to be so bad, but it should give us hope because we can too, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we have this new beginning of something. This is coming to a rest after this period of unrest or chaos or mobility. So Noah's name is prophetically, when you look at it, yes, he brings forth rest and he brings forth comfort. And when you look at scripture back in Genesis 5:29, it says that his parents named him Noach because they hoped their son would give them rest from their toil. Well, in that verse, if you read it like that, it may sound like Noah's going to give them rest. Y'all are going to do the work and he's just going to grant you rest. But that's not what it's about, because if we know anything, Hebrew is about what? Action. You have to do something. But that's what the KJV looks like. The KJV looks like, oh, mom and dad hope for rest when Noah shows up, and there you go. He'll sit back and it just happens. But again, that's not what the truth is, because Noah is going to comfort you concerning the restoration of things. Isn't it about getting back to Eden? Isn't it about restoring what Yeshua initially gave us? Yes. So we have Noah's going to comfort us concerning the restoration process, and he's going to restore us back to what was original. Although I believe in restoration, I've always seen this picture that restoration means you come back better than you were before. A bone that breaks, what happens? Is it the same?
Stronger.
It's stronger. And, y'all make something beautiful out of our messes, that's for sure. So when we see this name Noach, in part, it's actually inferring that Noah was going to be there to comfort us through something. But what happens before the comfort comes? Let me ask you this. Before the victory comes in your life, what do you have to go through?
Trials and trials.
And warfare. Before Israel could attain the land, they crossed the Jordan, but they had something they had to do. When people begin to walk in Torah, or even in the church, when they begin to walk in Yeshua, there's still something that has to be done. Boom, you don't automatically start following Torah and everything falls into place. You don't automatically begin to live your life for Yeshua and everything falls into place. There's warfare that goes on. There's killing the giants. There's removing evil. And we see that very same picture here, because before comfort comes, the warfare has to take place. And I don't know about you, but I'm sometimes like, okay, I really don't want to do more warfare.
Yeah.
I'm ready just to have rest and just leave it there. Just stop right there. But we also know in that there's a plan and a purpose for that, and we grow in that. And so here we have this picture. Oh, and you may say, wait. We're supposed to be sweet and nice and just smile and be the kind of Yeshua.
Everybody just
What comes to mind is when Jonathan used to do this voice, and he says, "Hi, my name is Jesus." It's funny. It was not meant to be, but it was funny. And he said, "And I believe in peace, and we shall just sit here and just sit back and look at flowers." That's not what it's about, because we have a sword in our hand, right? Yeah. And you may say, "Well, what about turn the other cheek?" Well, the same scripture that says turn the other cheek says to get your sword out. If you don't protect your family, you're called an infidel. So those are pretty strong words. So we need to balance what we learn and balance what we know, so we have the right picture in our mind. Because here Noah is hinted as a role as the protector of a way of life, a form of life. Now, why would I say that? Let's just look back. If Noah was the patriarch of the time, he was the only one holding the line, he and his family. So he had to be the protector of a way of life. Now, as we talk about that, I want you to consider, are you the protector of a way of life? Think about it. Just think about it, because we have an obligation to do the same thing Noah did and hold the line. We're supposed to hold the line. You know, Noah wasn't, I don't believe Noah's this passive guy that just things happen. I believe he was in today's speech a bad dude, not bad like bad, but he was a threat. He was a threat to the kingdom of the enemy, and he's a threat to those who adhered to that kingdom. And guess what? Everybody adhered to that kingdom. So Noah, in and of its what?
He built the ark.
He did.
A wimp can't do that.
It's true.
No.
And to stand up against the persecution that he faced constantly, day in and day out, as of doing that for 100 years. That's a lot. So here we have, one more time, Noah has this causative meaning he's going to bring or bequeath or be responsible for something that results in rest, okay? So my comment before we go on is that what do we have to do? One more time, it's reflective. What do we need to do so that we can enjoy rest? Okay, I want us to look at the numeric value of Noah with this Nun and Het, and it's 58. And for those of you that are newer, when you have a gematria, when you have a numeric value of a name or a word, there's going to be meaning that can be drawn from other words of that same numeric meaning or value. And just as words that have the same root are going to play a part in attributing to the meaning of that word. And I know this is really deep, guys. So if you guys need me to stop and explain, because we're going deep today, then you stop and let me know, and we'll back up a little bit and we'll look at it a little bit more closely. Okay.
Any other copies of the notes?
Yes, they're right here. Here you go, sweetie. You'll pass that. Okay, so here, another word that has the gematria of 58 is ear, ozen, O-Z-E-N. And when you see ear in Hebrew, or anytime, do we have one ear?
Two.
Two ear. And what do two ears help do? If it helps bring balance, right?
Yes.
So it takes two ears, one on each side of our head. Otherwise, we could be imbalanced, but we need to hear. And there's a lack of hearing. But there's also, when you look at ear, you can see that word balance is ozanin. Now, doesn't that sound really close to ozen and ozanin?
Well, if
Wow.
you stop to think about it, your ear is responsible for your balance, the middle ear part.
It's true.
It's the labyrinth and the fluid that goes through there.
It is responsible for your balance. So Yah's pretty smart. When he put that language together, he knows, because I think when we hear something, and let's apply it to today, we need to be able to hear the truth in that and walk in discernment, in the power of the Holy Spirit, discern right from wrong, discern truth from a tiny bit of truth with a lot of lie. And we've got to be balanced. We have to hear correctly, because otherwise we're experiencing improper balances, improper weights and measures, things that are off. And we live in a society that it's way off. So even when you apply this to Noach's name, you have this picture that Noah listened to whom? He listened to Yahweh. He listened to what he was saying, and he measured it correctly. He measured it properly. He heard it properly. Okay? So now is that you need to bring that up and put it also in Noach's name. So now he's protecting boundaries. He's bringing forth rest by his action, and he heard Yahweh properly. Okay? He balanced his word. He walked in discernment. So there's another word. When you look at a Hebrew word, how many of you understand there's no vowels written in the Hebrew, right?
Mhm.
You have vowel points. And so the same word with the Nun and the Het, or with the 58, not the Nun and the Het, but with the gematria of 58 is azan. That comes from the same vowel points as ozen here, azan. And guess what it means?
A weapon.
It's a weapon, like a military weapon. And it has this picture of a trench being dug. Now, we just got back from Sukkot, and several of us had animals, and there was one job we had to do that I wanted done constantly. It was a little harder this time. But one of my rules when we go to the Feast of Tabernacles is keep the camp clean. And if you do bring an animal, what do you need to do? You need to pick up any things those animals leave.
Bring a bucket and a pail.
And that's sort of what this picture of this tool is. Get rid of the waste and get it out of camp. Oh my, think about that. Think about that. Moses needs to, this picture of a tool, a weapon, a military weapon that removes what shouldn't be in the camp. I don't know. You can add this to his name. To me, it's getting a much deeper picture when you look at more than just rest. Rest is good, and it's true, but it's so much more, because when you put all this together, Noah, he was good at paying attention. He was good at listening and hearing, and he weighed what was being said and with the actions of those around him. And he decided that I'm going to draw the line, fence this off, and protect what I'm hearing, so that my house, and protect what my house is hearing, so that my house isn't compromised. Now, let me ask you that question. Should you do the same?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think of our granddaughter. When I say our, because there's more than one grandparent in this congregation to our granddaughter. But one of the girls from her, she's going to quote unquote school, but it's just a few hours a day. And it's just really to help me too, to supplement what I'm teaching her and Joy's teaching her. But one of the things she's come home with the last couple of days is she's never talked about this, never experienced it, but she's talking about Halloween. And come to find out, she says the name. Well, she has candy corn on her shirt, and it's a good thing. And I've been having to lay down the groundwork and say, it is not Amarillo. And she doesn't want to hear that. She said, but you get candy. I heard you get candy. I'm like, it is bad. But we have that same duty to protect what we're hearing and what our children are hearing, adult or otherwise, and draw that line and that protective boundary, that same as Noah.
Yep.
Now, I want to ask this question. Was Noah without sin? Of course not. He wasn't. And we're going to talk a little bit more about generations later on. What?
He liked to drink.
He did like to drink. You know what? Each and every one of us probably could have a list. We know our own stuff better than most. And some people, if we don't know our stuff, we need to get a clue. But he wasn't a perfect guy, but he was perfect in his generations. Not there yet. Okay. So another word that has that noon het is Nachash. Does anybody remember, without looking at your notes, what Nachash is? It is,
Peaked.
huh?
I've already.
You already peeked? All right. So we have serpent or serpent one. It's number H5175. And it's actually the negative form. Remember, I said every word has a positive and negative. So when I think of the serpent, when you think of the serpent, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
The garden.
Garden, yeah. And I think of when I just told you, what are we listening to and what are we hearing? What's the thing that the serpent does?
He distorts the truth.
He distorts the truth. Did he really say that?
He plants seeds of doubt.
Seeds of doubt. Again, what seed are we going to listen to? The seeds of the word. Are we dwelling upon the seeds of the word and we're letting those words resonate within us, or the seeds of Hasatan? And that's what he did. That's what the enemy does. He is always trying to cause us to question what Yahweh has said. And I taught, I think it was on the Torah Portion on Monday, I said something to the effect that the enemy has couple tactics. First, he's going to first off try to straight kill you, get rid of you. That's the easy part. And if he can't do that, then he's going to try to corrupt you. That's his second strategy, to steal, kill, and destroy. And so he comes in. Did he really say? Is it really that bad? What's one time going to matter? Are you sure? Or for Noah, It's never rained before. What are you doing, man? Are you sure you heard from God? Hello. This task is too big. Join us. Be like us. Come join the crowd.
What is rain?
What is rain? But the enemy, put that in your own life. Have you heard those words or those thoughts pass through your mind? Remember, just because the thought's there doesn't mean you sinned, because we take those thoughts captive and we pull them down. And what do we dwell upon? His word, whatever's praiseworthy. We can go there. We're not going to right now. But that in and of itself shows us one of the tactics of the enemy. If he can't get you, can't kill you, then he's going to try to come in another route. Think about Balak and Balaam. He wanted him to curse the Israel. He wouldn't do it. He said, I can't do it. And he says, but guess what, Balak? This is how you do it. You corrupt them with your women. And did it work?
Yes.
It sure did. So again, we see the serpent, the enemy's tactics is always to steal, kill, and destroy. If he can't do it one way, he's going to try to do it another way. But we have to live in a way that our lifestyle is going to protect all those around us and silence that voice. Okay? So we're going to continue on. Now, how many of you understand Aleph Tav? In the word, there is an Aleph and a Tav that are written. You don't see it in English. And it's not an accident that these names of the sons, because we're going to look at those real quick, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, are connected to an Aleph Tav. And we can excuse it away and we can say, well, it's just showing it's a direct object. I say, no. If the Alpha and the Omega, the Aleph and the Tav is Yeshua, we're going to see that when a name or a word is connected to an Aleph and a Tav, directly or indirectly, it is going to have something of Yeshua's character within it, or should. And that's a big question. It should. So when we see an Aleph Tav in some form, I think you always need to say in some form it's referencing Yeshua, our Messiah, and it's actually also connected to Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So if Noah is to lead his generation to rest, do you think it stopped at Noah, or do you think it was to continue?
It was supposed to continue. That's why he said, all of them worked on the boat.
Right. So then who would continue it?
It ended up being Shem.
But it's supposed to be your sons, right? So the sons are to continue to bring that rest, to watch the boundaries, the borders, to be discerning when they listen. Okay? And if you guys want to jump in, just let me know. So, and you online as well. So here we have this picture that these kids, these men now, are supposed to continue what he's been doing because they are connected to the Aleph Tav. So let's look at the word Shem, number 8035. And everybody, what is it? What's the simple meaning of Shem? Name. Now, if you Shem something, what do you do to it?
You name it.
You name it. Now, in my belief as well, I think Shem is also connected to the name, Yehovah, Yahweh. Okay, so when we say the name, I believe the name has to be correlated to his name. So the name of Shem has to be correlated to Yahweh, Yeshua, right?
Yes.
So understand that whatever name you apply, you're going to speak life or death when you speak that name, okay? And in some way, when you have the name, it's going to somehow give you some picture of Yahweh's character too, as well. If you're connected to the name, then our King, our Yah, is somehow going to have to be connected. And something in that character needs to be in us, that very same thing. So when we see the name Shem, and it means the name, the root of Shem indicates something more. It actually means to designate, to mark with a sign, okay? So when you think about that, when you hear Noach naming his firstborn Shem, the sign of the name is, yes.
I thought Shem was the second born.
I'm not saying when he was, did I say he was firstborn just then?
Yeah.
Okay. He is the secondborn. I'm meaning, yes, Japheth is the firstborn, but when he is naming his son, Shem, okay? So just get that picture. He is saying something is connected here, okay? Because I already stated they're in incorrect birth order when you see the names in scripture. Okay, so the sign, Shem, is saying that this post-flood generation of Shem would be the ones who would bear the name of Yah. Right there we have a hint, because does Japheth carry on the name?
No.
Does Ham carry on the name the way it's supposed to be? Any of them? No, it's Shem who is the one who is the sign that carries on the name. And in fact, in scripture, what are we said to do? What did Jacob do? What did he dwelt in the tents? What are we supposed to do? Dwell in the tents of Shem. Now, we can go into a whole bunch of stuff, Melchizedek and a whole bunch of other things with that. We're not going to today. But I want us to, we'll stop there with the name. We could go more. I want us to get to him, because when I go through here, we're sort of setting a precedence of people groups. The sages say that the world is divided into these three people groups, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, I'm not talking about anything, but there's characteristics that those names bring forth and that actually are prophetic. So we need to find out which name do we fall under. Okay, so we know Shem is the one that carried Yahweh's name. Shem is the one that was the Torah teacher. He was the Melchizedek. He was the one that went forward. Okay, so let's look at Ham. Okay, it's a het and a mem, and it is loosely defined as the word what? Hot. Okay, now when you think of hot, if you think something's hot, it can be untouchable. It can be passionate, excitable. All of these things sort of attribute to that name Ham and the word hot. But it can also refer to a lustful desire. And maybe you're going to see some things you haven't seen before, but I would say that the word hot in his name is inferring in part to a blackness, a heat, physical heat, a burning, almost a blackness within his heart that's associated with the heat, that passion. What was the passion running for? It wasn't running for Yah. We know that by the generations that come from him. So let's look at this. This two-letter root was seen in Yaakov and in the father-in-law, in Laban. It says that he separated his flock from that of his father-in-law, and the flocks are said to be variegated, speckled, and striped in different color. And that same two-letter root stem, het and a mem, is used to describe the colors of Jacob's flock. I don't think I gave you much on this in your notes. Okay? So what we have to understand is the word for Ham is more than just something that's the basic hot. That's basic black or white picture. It's indicated this variation of color, okay? This fiery red, variegated color. Now, when I think of variation in color, it's dappled. Maybe you're playing both sides. I don't know. But this same root conveys this color pattern that we see here, and this variegated. Now, I want to ask this question. Why did Jacob send his flock? Why did Jacob peel the bark and have his sheep drink from the trough?
Because they could see him.
Okay. Could somebody make sure I'm plugged in? Or
see what he was reading and create a speckle of the
Yes.
create the angel told him to do that so that he could get the sheep, the flock that he needed, because the father-in-law was stealing all of his.
Absolutely. The father-in-law, thank you, Terry. He was stealing it. And so there needed to be a DNA change to those sheep. Okay. Remember I said the story's about the seed, and this is where we're going, guys. We're going to be talking about DNA. There needed to be a DNA change, okay? The DNA change that takes place in the flock of Jacob was very important because it designated what was Jacob's and what was Laban's. There was another line drawn. It's all about the DNA. Jacob literally changed the DNA of his flock that had been bred with the flock of his father-in-law. Well, how can you change DNA? Well, let's look at our society right now, and let me ask you that question.
Washing of the water of the word.
The word changes our DNA. Bad words, even the psychological community will acknowledge a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell a kid he's a jerk or he's no good long enough, he will fulfill that role because you've literally changed his DNA. Because that same prophetic, we speak. That's why when we name our children, we better not just name them with a name that sounds cute or sounds good, or even of our father. You better name them the name Yah says, because you're prophesying over them. And it can change our DNA. It is, some say that the lighting can change our DNA. It can change our moods for sure. We know that when you go through an airport scanner, guess what happens? Even the people in the airport will tell you that walking through an airport scanner will change your DNA. Will, not question. Those are scientists and from reports from airports and things like that.
It's because of the type of radiation that they're using.
It's because of the type of radiation. We know that the food we eat changes our DNA. That's why we always hear about GMO, non-GMO, the chemicals. And now we are here with a jab that changes your DNA. Because again, what is this all going back to? We are looking at seed lines. Whose seed are we going to be? And I'm going to get more into that in just a minute. So here we see Jacob pushed forth a DNA change in his sheep. And we may not understand all the specifics. We don't actually have to. We just, it is what it is. It happened. Okay. So if he is trying, if the enemy I told you is out to steal, kill, and destroy, and he can't kill you outright, what's the next best thing besides deceiving you to change your DNA so that your seed will no longer be that of Yah's?
He's going to steal the word.
He will still steal the
Destroy
word, but
the
it's
word.
more than just that. I mean, it's so much bigger than just that. He's going to make sure that your DNA has changed. So you can change your circumstances, you can change your DNA, and that's ultimately why we don't get healed, delivered, and set free. I see you, Tammy, because many of us don't get changed on the inside. That DNA structure hasn't changed within us. I've told you before that in a message, man, it's been since 2015, probably since I did the message, but that sin will cause literally, you can see it when you look at your DNA. There will be a literal DNA change in something changed on your very DNA when you sin.
Marker.
It's a moniker.
Marker.
A marker, yes. And a moniker, a sign, almost like that. But so, and if that can happen, so can living for God happen the same way, because the word heals our DNA. The word heals us. I will say this, Amariah, her dad is a drummer. He's a great musician. That child, pretty much from the time she could walk, could get on that drum set. Now, could she play like her father? No, but she knew things, and I have no idea how she could know how to hold the drumsticks and just know how to work that drum set. I'm telling you, I believe there's a marker on her DNA. And we see that in our kids. Well, my dad was an alcoholic, and so is an alcoholic. You have generational curses. You have demonic stuff you have to deal with, but we're also talking DNA. And who says that's not a part? Because we're not talking demonic possession here. We're talking oppression. And it's almost like that thing sitting upon you, messing with you. So here we have this DNA, this working of the DNA. So with that being said, let's just summarize. Your words can change your DNA. What you say can change your DNA for the good or for the bad. His word is the only thing that will bring it healing.
Yes.
It's our hope. It's his word. Okay, so let's go back to Ham. We know that his grandfather was,
Nimrod.
all right, and we know that Nimrod builds.
The Tower of Babel.
Ham is the grandfather of Nimrod, and we know that Nimrod builds the Tower of Babel, right? And what is Nimrod? What is his dad's name? It's Cush.
Yes.
Okay, And it is often rendered black as well, but I believe it's translated incorrectly because I believe we're going back to the same character issue. He doesn't walk uprightly. He walks in darkness. Got this? There's a big difference. People have mistranslated to justify wrong behavior throughout our time and the persecution of peoples, and it's wrong. Because when we're talking Cush, and it meaning, I believe it's rendering this dark character and this countenance that's dark, has darkness and evil within it, okay? And it also indicates being filled with rage and bitterness and hatred. And if you guys understand, if you have one of those, do others come along the way?
Oh, yeah.
If you're bitter, what's going to happen? What's it going to turn into? Or offense. If you start with offense, it's going to be bitterness, eventually hate, outrage, et cetera, et cetera. That stuff grows kingdoms of its own within us. And so we start living wrong. But here we have this picture of Cush. So we have two generations. We have, or three, Ham, Cush, and Nimrod. Did any of them live right?
No.
So to me, there's something within the character that keeps perpetuating itself from generation to generation to generation. So when you look at this dark character, it's like blood's rushing to your skin, and it's extreme passion. But here's something interesting about the Kuf and the Shin, which are the root of the word, which are the root of Cush. Guess what it means? Astrologer, one that's given to magic and sorcery. Guys, do you think this played a part in him, in Cush and Nimrod?
Oh, yeah.
At the very least, Cush was participating in sorcery. He was participating in magic. And that's what's in his name. And that's marked his DNA. And thus, the generations after him, what are they going to do? It's demonic, it's in his DNA, and it's so much more. So that's why Cush's son Ham, or Cush's son Nimrod is known for building the tower, because the tower's astrological purpose was going to drive everybody into a frenzy and cause them to wander from the truth, unable to discern and hear correctly, all going back to what Noah is supposed to do. Okay. All right. So here we have this picture of the agenda of Hasatan to distort the DNA. Okay. Now let's look at Japheth. Now this one's going to get you when you look at this one closely. Okay. 33:15 in Hebrews, the Strongs, and it means opened. Okay. So it also means spread, spacious and spread wide, to be enticed. Okay, listen to this. Japheth means to be enticed, to be gullible, and to be seduced. Now, let me ask you this question. I told you everybody, the sages say, goes into a people group. Do you know of a people group right now that's being seduced, gullible, deceived, enticed? We see a world of people, huh?
The black people are being seduced and enticed, that they believe that Black Lives Matter over everything, and that, they're being lured with deceitful lies.
But I don't see, when I'm thinking people group, I'm thinking people, and I think there's a lot of people that are being deceived that way. And that's sort of what I'm referencing. You have, again, the line being drawn in the sand. You have people that are outright in your face against God. And then you have some that are out there saying, I love y'all. I love Jesus, but I can live my life the way I want to.
LYGBN.
ABCD, yes, that whole group. So you have those that hate him. That's sort of where I see Ham's group, right? They're going to be full of witchcraft and sorcery and just hate of God. But you have a group out there that's seduced and gullible. And who is that? We can start with the church, the congregation that doesn't follow his word, his Torah. They're out there. They believe everything hook, line, and sinker. And by the way, we're not immune to that. Hebrew roots people do too. And some of them are deceived and gullible too. But see, we can't define it by what we think. We define it by our actions. What people group? So we have, New Day says all humanity, and Pharmakia is sorcery. Absolutely. So here we have this picture Japheth is representing this people who are deceived. How many people have eaten the lie of the protocol of the world right now? And if you don't do the protocol, then you can't buy or sell and you can't participate in life. There's a lot of people that have been so gullible and enticed, whether it's by fear or by trusting or just because they're not in their word. When the word says, don't you put anything that's not in the Bible in your body. Well, if that list of ingredients isn't in the Bible, then I don't think it should be injected into our body.
Amen.
That's right.
So here we have, now do you see how when the sages are sort of correct when they're saying we're divided into three categories? We have those that have been deceived, just like Japheth's name says, that are gullible, that have just fallen for the lies, and then we have those that are discerning and hearing and protecting the boundaries, that are following his word, that are perpetuating his word from generation to generation. And then we have those people that are outright in your face. God, there is no God, or I am God, or you name it. There's other gods, but the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob isn't the real deal. And that's what we see here. Now, with Japheth can also mean indicate an open, ingenious mind, but I just think it's very interesting when you break this down. It's very clear to me after studying this out, when you look at the names, that our society today is divided more so than ever before into three people groups. And it has nothing to do with the color of dirt you're made out of.
No.
Dirt's dirt, whether it's light dirt, dark dirt, whatever color, it doesn't matter. Skin color is irrelevant. We're all exactly the same. So here we have the names of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth give us this prophetic picture. Okay, and I think I put this in your notes, but I'm going to read it out loud anyway in case someone doesn't have the notes. And it says, the nature of these Hebrew names reveal a message leading up to the events of Genesis 6. Noah was charged with the protection of something key to the existence of his way of life. Do y'all all have that in your notes? Okay. He would lead a remnant of people who embody those traits and be marked accordingly. He would stand against the counterfeit, whose lustful passions would attempt to eliminate the DNA of Yahweh. Okay, before we go further, what was happening in society at that time? The DNA was completely changed. The DNA of animals, of food, and of people was completely changed.
Like today.
Now we look at what's happening today. Today, we have GMO food. Why? We produce food, we splice the genes, we do all sorts of things because we want a better yield and we want more money. Of course, I think the ultimate elite have no better and they have other agendas at hand. But it's all about the dollar. And so we change our food, we change what it is, we remove good food. In fact, when you go, it's hard to get seed that's non-GMO. They don't even want to sell it to you. They want to give you seed that won't produce after itself so that you can be completely reliant on the government. We have military who I don't believe is trying. I believe they've already created a super soldier by messing with DNA. I hear, and I've read articles on when we've done our TV shows of human DNA being mixed with animals already. And if it's out there now for the public to hear, it's been going on for a long time, and I guarantee they've successfully done so. But we're also dealing, guys, with, and we're about to get there, there was a change in DNA from the get-go when you're talking about the Nephilim. I know there's some out there that say it's men of renown and it's other things. I don't believe that. I believe when we go into the Hebrew here in a minute, it's going to clearly show the sons of God, which has never been anywhere in Scripture meant anything but angels, by the way, went into the daughters of men. And it creates what? It destroys the DNA. It destroys the seed line. Because what has Hasatan's purpose always been? To destroy the seed line, destroy the DNA. So could his purpose be the same by getting everybody to buy into lies so that there's no one left with DNA of Yah's anymore, whether innocently they destroy their DNA or whether on purpose or just because they don't care. Does it not sound like a possibility that that's exactly, we are in the days of Noah. I think about this. I thought, how did every being on the face of the earth get their DNA messed up? Everyone, so that they no longer had the generations that were perfect, Yah's DNA within them, or it had been changed. And now let's just think about this. We don't believe that back in those days they had the watcher angels and things like that. Society wasn't this, as the world would say, cavemen. It wasn't that. In fact, there's computers that have been found to exist even back thousands of years ago. So don't think that it's all this technology has just come about just now. Okay, if one prick of injection can make the masses fall to receive it, and they're changed, their DNA's changed. And think about it. Masses of people, millions or billions of people have had their DNA changed by choice. Could that not have been how easily something could have happened even back then? Because I've always thought, how could everybody except for 8 people on the face of the planet have messed up DNA? It sure happened fast here, didn't it? It took over the world, and it's still at work. Are y'all getting what I'm saying here? Being careful because of our channels that we're on.
Oh, yeah.
So I have to watch what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. But could it not have been that easily for Hasatan to destroy the seed line just like he's done it here? It says in the word that if Yah tarried, that even the elect would be deceived. Now, what would happen? It got down to 8 people with Noah. 8 people. Let's take what's happening in our society today and carry it out. Would it eventually get to where there was only a few left that carry his pure DNA line?
Oh, yeah.
It's the same thing. Do you guys see how the enemy hasn't changed? He's doing the same thing, but we're too intellectual to believe it because we're smarter, because give me a break, we're dumber because we don't believe it. Yeah, you know, anyway, I'm not even supposed to be in there in my notes yet. That's way down the line, but I went there. So anyway, but if we continue on with what Noah and the sons done with their names, there would be many seduced by the dark ones who would be enticed by their enchanting words of sorcery, leading them to seduction and deception. Ding, ding. Do I get a ding, ding, anybody?
Ding, ding,
Okay. The womb of their minds would be open to the broken words of the false covenant. Now, I've told you, you hear words. If you let those bad thoughts in your head, those snake eggs and spider webs begin to develop, when you think about them, you're wombing them, and they're going to be birthed through your mouth and your actions. And that's what we see. We see a group of people. So now I want us to go forward. I told you we're not going to get very far today because I'm doing it differently than usual. But we're going to look at the word generations. So Genesis 6:9. Oh, we're at the first verse finally. Okay. So Genesis 6:9 says, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. And Noah walked with God. So how many times do you see generations in that sentence? A couple, right?
2.
Okay. So the word generation in English, it actually has 2 different generations. The first generation is Toldot. Toldot. Have you heard of that word before?
Yes.
Hopefully, it's the name of a Torah portion, right?
Yes.
Which means lineage, okay? His pedigree that got him where he's at. That's the first generations, okay? And so up to this point, up to Noah, people had been perfect in their generations. The DNA had not been changed. When we're talking about perfect in generations, we're not talking about a perfect man. We're talking about the seed had not been corrupted within them. Okay? So it also says he was a righteous man, perfect in his generation. Okay? Here, the word, it's Dor. D-O-R, D-O-W-R, We're going to talk about it later as well. But it shows us a generation, but it shows us specifically a race, a period of time that Noah was charged with. Okay? So there's something he's been charged with right here. All right. Everybody's very quiet today. So here we have something about the seed being separated, the seed from the enemy and his seed. And Yah's seed, okay? Now, I want us to look at the words, it came to pass. It came to pass by a he. It came to pass. This word follows on the heels of, guess what? Noah naming his kids. So to me, those two should be connected, okay? And it came to pass by he. It sort of hints at what follows occurs in opposition to the birth of Noah's sons. If you read it in Hebrew, it's going to say whatever's about to happen is trying to destroy the seed line. And I know this is all going back to the same thing, but maybe Yah's trying to teach us something because it's going back to the very same thing this day and this hour. It's the very same battle that's occurring. That's why I think it's so apropos that we're reading this Torah portion today in this hour, even this time of year. Okay, so the sages teach the expression, and it came to pass by he is one of pain and trouble, and it came to pass. Oh, I've seen that. I don't know about you guys. But in addition to the va, the grammatical sense is used to switch to a future tense. What do I mean by that? Maybe he's saying, and it came to pass doesn't only have to do with back then, it has to do with what's to come. Are we living in what's to come right now?
Yes.
Absolutely. And then we see the letter hey is inserted, and it indicates severity. It's right before the yod. Anyway, that's getting so deep. Let me just get down because I don't want to lose everybody there. But the bottom line, when it came to pass, it's written looking backwards to the past and citing the events of Genesis 6 occurring in an attempt at counterfeiting Noah's lineage. There's a whole bunch. I could talk to you for another 10 minutes on that. But the bottom line is, even those words, when you break them down, are looking at the same thing. There's something that's trying to destroy Noah's lineage. If Noah's line was destroyed, where would we be? If Seth and Japheth and him were all corrupted, where would we be right now?
We wouldn't be here.
There's nothing left. Would Messiah have been able to come into the world? No. And that's what it's all about. So what comes to pass? We're going to go through this real fast and hopefully get to warfare and stuff like that. But when you read the KJV, it talks about what we just said. The daughters of men begin to multiply on the face of the earth. Now, I want us to break this down because it's going to give us a picture. Now, men in Hebrew is Adam, and it's a common generic term, and it means that they begin to multiply. The word begin doesn't mean they continue to do something. We would think if you begin to do something, we are starting and will continue to work on project ABC. That's not what this word is implying here, because begin here is the word halal, and it's most often translated to profane. And y'all are going to want to write this in your word in a minute when I give it to you. To profane something, specifically to profane something like you would with idolatrous practices, to defile, to pollute, to desecrate, to begin, to multiply. So in reality, when it says the daughters of men begin to multiply on the face of the earth, it's a mistranslation, and I believe it's a deliberate mistranslation to lead us away. Because here's what it should say. It should read, the profaning of man begin to multiply on the face of the earth. Now, what makes sense right there? That children, the people begin to multiply, or the profaning of man, the profaning of his word begin to multiply on the face of the earth.
That's what happened in his words.
And that's what it means. That it was mistranslated. That's what it should say. That the profaning of man begin to multiply. or to be multiplied. And that's what we saw. Exactly what you said, Michael. All of the world was profaned. All of it was messed up. I have no idea what page that's on, if y'all are wondering. So,
What verse? I mean, I'm
Where-
I'm trying to figure out where
verse.
this verse you're at. 6:9 of Genesis 6:9.
okay. Well,
About Genesis 6:3, 2, 1.
no, I'll have to, I didn't put the verse number down. The daughter, I'd have to look it up. I'd have to look,
It's Genesis 6:1.
okay. So the daughters, they begin to multiply.
So multiply should be profane. Or
Here, I'll read it again. It should be that they read the profaning of man begin to multiply or to be multiplied. Okay? Genesis 6:1.
that's on page 4 at the top.
Page 4 at the top of your notes. Okay. So in reality, the language here focuses more on multiplication of their profaning things. It's not talking about their numbers, although their numbers are important. It's talking about the wickedness was growing in the world. Okay? The wickedness was growing in the world, and it was profaning their lifestyle. It's not talking about the increase of the population. It's talking about the evil. And that just reminded me, something popped into my head. And this, some of you guys may be offended by this, but Lord of the Rings, it talks about the evil was multiplied on the earth and things began to show in just everyday society. And that's sort of that same picture. Anyway,
There was
So-
one little section that was protected from that. And even then, during that part, it eventually got invaded.
corrupted. Exactly.
But
So
people were able to recover.
that's right. So even though King James English says man begin to multiply, that's not correct translation. And it has caused people to go askew because it's incorrect. Okay. So man was becoming more profane, which, I mean, we know that. That's pretty much a given. So here we are, that there's evil in the world and it's getting more evil. There's wickedness. Now, there's a camp that's separated now, and there's the rest of the world. And here's where the camp that's separated, because when you talk, here's where people get offended or get lost. When you talk of sons of God, people do not want to believe there's extra beings. Now, other demonic, fallen angels, etc. Now, based on our news and what's happening today, I would think it would be really easy to understand that, because the world's getting ready to introduce their quote unquote alien race. It's not alien, guys. It's the product, the Nephilim, the fallen angels, etc. Even the Pope, everybody is getting ready to put this in the earth. And I think one of the lies may be that Yeshua is really an alien, and then it would completely tear apart his story, and some probably will fall for it. So I think in today's society, it's probably easier to believe all this than it was 10 years ago, because now people do their evil right in front of your face. They don't try to hide it. Not anymore. It's in your face. So what? It's right here. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And that's why what we do, drawing that line and protecting our boundaries and discerning what we see and hear is so important. That's why I think going through these names gives us this commission, or reminds us of our mission in the world today. And it also gives us encouragement that it can be done. So here we have the profaning of the world is increasing. Is that happening, guys?
Oh, yeah.
Do y'all see the world getting better in the future?
Nope.
No.
No,
Not until the Father comes.
not until the Father comes. So let's look at these, the sons of Seth. Okay, tell me if this makes sense, since we're talking about DNA change and the corruption and wickedness of the world. For those that believe these were just sons of Seth, that they were sons of man, would that equal out the narrative? Not really, because why would it even point it out if just man and woman get together and have kids? Does that need pointed out?
No.
There's something driving. I believe there's a force driving the people on the earth today, that it's not a physical force. It is in part, but there is spiritual behind it.
Yeah.
There is spiritual evil behind what we see happening. Okay, so why am I pointing this out? I'm just trying to make, you can still, and it's okay to agree to disagree too. I'm just pointing out my ideas of why just regular guys, human beings, doesn't make sense to me. Okay, because if it was just Seth's people, why would there need to be a distinction? Because that's just what's going on in regular life. And also, the language focuses not on the evilness, not the multiplying of people, but the multiplying of evil and wickedness in the earth, and more so than the increase of population. And so that's why I do think just there's more we could go on of why we're dealing with fallen angels here. So let's look at what the beings saw. What did these beings, the watcher angels or whomever the fallen angels, what did they see in women? They were fair, okay? Fair is 2896, which everybody, what is fair? What is good? What's that in Hebrew? Tov. We know that's the word tov. And that is, it does mean good, but there are so much more meaning than just good. It's pleasant, it's agreeable, it's valuable, it's a good thing, it's a bounty, it's a benefit. So the idea here, if you think of a bounty and a benefit, is that the women, if I boil it all down, these women weren't chosen because they were beautiful or because they looked good or whatever. They were chosen because they could accomplish what the fallen wanted to do with them.
They had a good.
They would be a vessel which they could use to change the seed line, which goes back again. It's the battle of the seed lines. So here we have these women. It was about their functionality to the enemy. And I think the enemy looks at us. Who can I use to function for me, to be on my side, to work my ways, to bring more evil into the world? I think that the enemy and his cohorts are still doing the same thing with us.
Oh,
and too many of us become those willing vessels that say, I'll sign up. And we can't do that. That's not what we've been called to do. All right. So these women were chosen. Let's look at this word, H977. It's the word Bahar. Okay. So the pure definition of Bahar is to prove something, to try it, to examine it. It's not just to say, oh, look, I've chosen it. It's nice. It's pretty. It's good. That's not what it's talking about here. When you're looking at Bahar, it means to put her to the test. Okay? When we're seeing it in this verse here, it's women in general were put to the test. They were tried and they were examined to find out if they were capable of procreating with the fallen. That's what we see here in these words, fair and chosen, Bahar and Tov, okay? These women were examined and found suitable. So let's continue, because the whole messed up incidents is that man is flesh, man is basar. And that's all you see in English is man is flesh. And it says God will not strive with man because man is flesh. But in Hebrew, man is described as shagag flesh. What kind of flesh? Shagag basar. Well, we don't see that in the English. So we have to find out what kind of flesh basar man is. I'm going to tell you what shagag means. It means flesh that goes astray, flesh that wanders, that errs, that's easily led astray.
Has a wandering eye.
That's carnally minded, wandering, yes. So that's Hasatan, wants to stretch it out longer to make things get messed up. And Yahweh sets a time frame in his mercy that I'm coming back and I'm coming back to get my own, or there will be nobody left. Okay. So let's look at the word. We're going to continue. We're going to look at other things here. Giants. It's number 5303. And again, we have people that's on two camps here. They're just men of strength and power, political strength and power. To me, when you say giant, it means giant.
Yeah. Like 15 plus foot tall.
Well, did you know there are some skeletons that have been found that are 400 something feet tall?
Wow.
And they're all being.
But they're immediately picked up and hidden in the Vatican in places.
Well, it's not only the Vatican, but there's also some in the.
Antarctica?
Well, there's some in Antarctica, but there's also some in the Smithsonian.
In the Smithsonian. I mean, in general, they got smaller and smaller. But have you ever? I've always wondered about the beautiful place over there in the Mideast. It's Jordan, and it's got the big doors. Have you? I'm trying to think. I've just went blank on the place. Shangri-La, no. Anyway, if you go to some of the ancient architecture and you see some of the doors, they're massive. Why do you think those doors were like that? And we may wonder how things were built and accomplished. Well, when you've got a race of beings that are not human, things can be changed and accomplished a lot more quickly. And anyway, so giants. Even Og, we look at Og, and what does it say about Og? His bed was like, I put it in your notes.
18 feet in scripture.
18 feet? Yeah. I mean, we're not talking this little, we're talking giants are giants, and there's a reason that there's a reason. So it all hinges, though, if we can believe that the sons of God were just men, and the daughter, just their population was just increasing, and there were no giants, it's just people of renown. Does that not change our history and change the way we look at things and then change the way we react to things?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So prevailing opinion says maybe it's just men of political power and strength, but you know what? I've seen too many things and seen giant. There's such physical evidence of the giants and things like that. And even 2 Peter 2:4-5. Let's look at 2 Peter 2:4-5, actually. 2 Peter 2:4-5. When somebody's there, you can read it. It should be fine. Joe says they have great, they threw them into the ocean, and they have great mound hills here in Ohio that found giant bones in them. So very cool. Who has 2 Peter 2:4-5 that would read it?
For God did not spare the angels who sinned. On the contrary, he put them in gloomy dungeons, lower than Sheol, to be held for judgment. And he did not spare the ancient world. On the contrary, he preserved Noah, herald of righteousness, with 7 others, and brought the flood upon a world of ungodly people.
Okay. So again, it's talking about it's talking about the results of the Nephilim and everything here on earth, and the weird offspring with human women known as the Nephilim and the sons of God. Anyway, I want you to understand too, the events of Genesis 6 were understood by ancient rabbinical sources as well as the Septuagint translators as referring to fallen angels procreating with human offspring. It's in more recent times that we've tried to justify with our own wisdom and knowledge, quote unquote, of why it couldn't possibly be actual other physical beings. And I gave you guys some more information on that. Now I want us to look at imagination. And again, if you guys have never tuned into the Torah portion with me, I don't always go through this many words. I do other things, but I really thought this had a message for us today. And that's why we're really digging deep into a lot of this, because I believe it's going to string together some thoughts and the way we are supposed to behave and a reflection of what we're living in right now. So we have imagination, which is Yetzer, and it's H number 3336, and it means to form, to frame, to purpose, like a potter or a building or a vessel. It shows that that you are forming and framing like a potter would in a building or vessel. So imagination of men's hearts, your heart is being framed and formed into something. Remember, the heart thinks. We've talked about that in a message I've done before too. We're not talking about the physical, the heart. It is though. It is and it isn't. It's both. So we can't blame just the fallen for our actions, because the word most clearly tells us our hearts were turned and we began to have vain imaginations of our heart. Remember what I said earlier? If you don't watch the thoughts that are in your head, whether they're by you or someone else, you're going to think about them, and it's going to come out in your words and your actions. And if you were not watching what you put before your eyes, what you put what you hear, what you see, what you're a part of, who you're mixed with, you are going to become just like those vain imaginations, and you will do and act out evil just like everybody else.
Yep.
That's why we've got to watch what we're putting in. How much word do we get? How much word versus the junk of the world do we get every day? Because of the thoughts of our heart. They can be changed. What did Noah do? Remember, Noah put up that boundary that said, you're not coming across here. Yeah, I'm not thinking about that. I'm not dwelling upon that. I'm dwelling upon what Yah's word says. I will not cross the line. And we've got to be able to do the same thing. We're not going to cross the line. So, thoughts of the heart. Makashva. So, here we have, it means to meditate, to build, okay? It's used 4 times in the Torah, and each time it denotes one who cunningly builds something. Again, this is going back to man cunningly building something, okay? Man is cunningly changing the DNA. Yes, there are other forces out there that may be starting it. We can blame big governments. We can blame the elite. We can blame angelic hosts, but the bottom line is man's imaginations, man's thoughts, man's focus have become destructive and evil of themselves, because man is the one carrying it forward. They're the ones doing the legwork. They're the ones doing the deed. And then we have the gullible, like Japheth, following hook, line, and sinker for it. Okay? So I think, do you guys not see how this is a blueprint of what we're living today? It's like almost verse by verse. So abomination. Let's turn to Leviticus 18:20 through 25. Leviticus 18:20 through 25. Who'd like to read that?
18 what? 32 through
20 through 25.
20 through 25.
Yeah.
Moreover, thou shalt not lie carnally with thy neighbor's wife, to defile thyself with her. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to the Moloch. Neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord. Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination. Neither shalt thou lie with any beast to defile thyself therewith. Neither shall any woman stand before a beast to lie down thereto. It is confusion. Defile not ye yourselves in any of these things, for in all these the nations are defiled which I cast out before you. And the land is defiled. Therefore I do visit the iniquity thereof upon it, and the land itself vomiteth out her inhabitants.
All right. I wanted you to notice something here. Much of that had to do with the sexual nature. And there was a progression.
Yeah.
There's a progression there. Once you do a little evil, you'll begin to do more and more and more. So here we have you're exposing your nakedness of your mom or your sisters or your family members. And then it went to idolatry, and then it went to homosexuality, and then it went to bestiality and the prohibition of lying with an animal. Why would they say don't do that if it wasn't happening? I can tell you in this congregation right here in this building, we've had young adults who participated with Stanley Marsh. Okay, you guys don't know, Stanley Marsh was a big wizard, wicked guy here in Amarillo. And he was super rich. He's dead now. Yeah, well, but he would get guys and people and some of the big names in the city of the money names would participate. And there was a couple of kids that would come here to our young adults, and we tried to minister to them that did participate in that with them. And that's shocking. But they were actually doing this very thing. Because you think, who would do that? But it happens. It happens. And it's sick and it's twisted and everything else. But man is sick and twisted when our mind is not being redeemed and renewed. So the reason it said it is because it's happened and it's still happening. It hasn't changed. I know that, Liz, you were talking about the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I group. It's the same thing, you know, they're making their way. And if they can progress from one to the other, the debauchery is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And
their
it's,
hearts, they know they're wrong.
Yeah.
They know they're wrong. But they just need that out public acceptance. Why? You know where you're going, just enjoy your life.
well,
Be a sinner,
because it feels good. If you're sinning, it feels good to have other people sin with you. Bring them down with you. But in all of these
They
things,
all have a party when they get there.
that's true. Well, I think you'll be in desperately alone and a lot of other things. But if you look at this, about each of these acts, it all would pervert the seed line. Do you know today they're trying to have, and again, since the news says men, they're trying to implant wombs in men so men can have babies and all sorts of things. Yeah, I know.
I don't want to have a baby.
But
Actually, a man's body's not built to take the pain of childbirth. There you go. So actually, I like to witness that just for a good laugh.
Let's say a man can come to give a childbirth, he has kidney stones.
Because that's one of the women's wish. You need to feel this just once.
Well,
She'll be a widow real quick.
Well, there's videos out there where these guys take the 10 units, or it's a special electric deal that makes the muscle contract.
Really? That's crazy.
And they will put it in the stomach area and crank that thing full blast, and they get the more.
wow, I haven't heard of that.
That's
I've seen
crazy.
it on YouTube. It's hilarious.
Well, all I know,
It gives them an idea of what the woman's going through with those contractions.
They have no idea.
there you go.
It gives them an idea.
I don't care what they insert. There's no idea that they can get.
But you are
Section
pay it for it immediately.
Well, New Day says, what a gift.
That's crazy.
What a gift y'all has given us to be able to control our thinking and renew our minds. And Joe says, this is why Johanna, we have two Joes, one male, one female, so I have to differentiate right now. He tells us to fellowship with one another and to be with one another so that we're not alone. And there's things to not tempt the flesh. So agreed. But every one of those acts that we see in Leviticus, and it's about the seed line. Let's protect the seed. Let's protect the plan of Yahweh. Let's make a boundary. Let's draw the line so that the enemy's plan's not going to succeed. Okay? And I'm deciding whether I should skip through the next couple pages. Maybe I will. Okay. So with that part of the teaching over, we're going to continue on. I skipped some, it's in your notes, but do you guys see the picture of what's happening with the names and how literally we are in as in the days of Noah? Although I think it honestly, and I hate to say this, I think it could get worse. You know, hallelujah, we are living where we are living, but there may be a time where, I know there'll be a time where we are going to have to be separated one way or the other, whether Yah does it for us or whether we do it and then Yah does it, I don't know. But I know that evil will get more evil. If it follows this pattern, evil will get more evil. And we think there's a big difference between both groups now, those that follow Yeshua, his Torah, and those that don't, or the three people groups, the gullible, the easily deceived, those against God, and those that are Shem, that follow his word. But I think the line it is going to be so obvious. Now, here's what I want us to be as a people. I don't want us to be the people that, there's those that are going to run from us, make fun of us, do whatever, try to imprison us and kill us. But we should also be a people group that brings healing and deliverance and life and joy and love, because the world's going to get darker and we should get lighter.
Yes.
The world's going to get more like Cush and Ham, with that darkness of soul and spirit. And we need to be those people that have the answer. Yeah, even now, it's hard for people to go to the hospital and the doctor. Well, we need to be at the place where all you got to do is go gather with his believers and you'll find the healing of God in your life.
Yes.
And so I think that encouragement is very, very important. Now, I thought it was really interesting. We're going to look at the science of the flood. And I put a lot of this in your notes, so you're going to have it. But I found well, I'm just going to talk about it for a minute first, because I gave you, it says the Kola super deep borehole. And I've heard about this borehole for years, that it was so deep, et cetera, et cetera. And it's in your notes. I don't know what page, but it says May of 1970, Soviet scientists began drilling into the Earth's crust in the far north of Kola Peninsula between Norway and Russia. Their goal was to dig the deepest hole ever. And it says 9 years later, they broke the world record about 10 kilometers underground, and they hit the deepest point in 89, reaching 12,262 meters. But they couldn't continue anymore because the temperature was much higher than expected, over 180 degrees Celsius, and the rock became too porous. Now, when I say this, when you think about this, it's amazing to me. So scientists found fossils deep down in the earth where there should be no fossils found. Why would that be? Now, for the flood, did it just rain? There would have never been enough rain to produce what needed to happen to cover the earth with water. We know that the deep shot forth, the waters of the deep. And we talk about that, and we may even sing about that. We get that picture, but I don't think we could ever understand fully the forcefulness and the amazing picture of what that truly is. So when we see fossils down there, to me, it just verifies one more time of the flood, because as those waters spewed forth, when they receded and came down, what was there could have sunk down into the earth, into those deep, deep craters as well.
And I think that when the fountains of the deep broke loose, it was like a volcano of water.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, and when you think about this, the rock was porous. Now, how many of us think about porous rock when we think of rock? Okay. But I will say this, are we supposed to be porous? Because we are the living stones, the eben, and we are supposed to have living water flowing out of our bellies. So then are we supposed to be porous, eben, rock? I think so, actually. So literally, physically, the rock was porous as they dug deep. And the scientists from Northwestern University examined the rocks, and they were composed of 1.5% water.
Wow.
A rock composed of water. Now, that makes me think of Miriam. You've always said, well, how could the water have shot forth out of the rock? Because there's water in it, and it's a porous rock, and it's example how we're supposed to have the living water flowing through us. So here they are, because these scientists concluded that there is 3 times more water beneath the Earth's crust than in the ocean. Wow. So I've heard, Joy, we've talked about this. The lie that we're going to run out of water is a lie. It's a lie, because there is enough water, a perpetual water in the earth to keep us going. But they want to remove our source of water and taxes and so many other things. It's all another agenda of the world that we live in. Okay, so if there's 3 times more water in the Earth's crust, could there not be more rocks that give forth water? Absolutely. So here we have this scientific source that gives us this picture of this water, and the depths had to be split apart, and it solves this mystery why there's fossils within the depths of the earth. And to think that there were mushy rocks that were filled with water. Now, I'm not talking 90% water, but it's water nonetheless. It just gives us this picture of how Yah has it all planned out, and how he can burst forth with that water. Now, the water is the sages say the water was hot, and that it would spew forth between a man's legs, that when he was standing there, it goes, psh. Now, wouldn't it be interesting that measure for measure, that the evil that they're doing, messing with the seed line, is they were shot with hot water, thick hot water. It's said to be thick. I mean, this is just something that said, I can't prove it one way. Well, it doesn't say lava, it says hot water, but yeah, lava. That sure gives you the picture, doesn't it?
Those hot water springs in the mountains that comes from the bottom of the
That's true. Is it? Oh, and the lava's moving right now.
Arkansas.
They show
So-
movies, but sometimes they got so hot that people's flesh fell from their bones and their
Wow.
skeletons.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at heat is a euphemism, can be a euphemism for sexual sin. Hot water, hot lava. And there was definitely that going on as it is today back then. So anyway, the scientists at Kola were surprised that the temperatures below were much harder than they expected. And now I haven't figured out the thick thing yet, why the sages say the water is said to be thick. But all I know is that scientifically, just that little piece of information is very fascinating to me when I think about porous rocks and the water flowing. Now, I wanted to look at something else just briefly. I don't have a lot of commentary on it. And you guys, please be ready to tell me what you guys want to talk about too, because I could go on and on. But look at the pictures at the back of your notes. Do you guys see that? Is that not cool?
It is.
Do you not see how the world, okay, how many of you have heard that the world was once one landmass? Okay. One landmass. We weren't always continents and nations divided. In fact, if you look at Genesis, let's look at Genesis 1:9 and 10. Let's go to Genesis 1:9 and 10.
That's nice.
And look at that. It looks almost exactly like that, doesn't it?
Perfect.
That's bizarre.
It's wow. That is mind blowing to me. Okay, who has Genesis 1 verses 9 and 10?
And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he sea.
That's good. That's good. I want you to, was that word plural for land or singular?
Singular.
Singular.
Okay. One land mass. But to think about it being his land, his place where he birthed his people, and having that picture there, I have to contemplate this more because I think there's a lot more to it than just what we're saying. But to me, that's an amazing picture right there about Pangea and the earth and the land as he created was as a baby. I don't like the word fetus, so I'm not going to say that. Now, well, I just did, but you know what I mean. Okay, I wanted to bring out another point, and this is a differing opinion point than some, but you guys know that I will bring out differing opinions whether I agree with them or not, and that it's on the confusion of language for the Tower of Babel. Okay, this is by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, and he was echoing what the sages say, and I found it very interesting. He said that one language wasn't about one tongue. It's not about speaking all the same dialect. Now, let me ask you this. You two, do we speak differently than Jersey and other places?
Yep.
Has anybody ever listened to like an English TV show and they speak the same language we do, but I'm like, what did they say?
Yeah.
I have no idea what they
Well, even in England, the dialects
are
are
so different.
and they're on an island.
And things diverge quickly in dialect. Okay, let's think of Louisiana. Now, Louisiana, that it's Cajun, but it was initially French.
Yes.
Now it's French Cajun.
French, yes, but I'm talking the dialect changed when they moved. They were still the same people, but it's way different. And I've told you this before. I grew up in a little place called Dimmitt, Texas, and there was one guy there, a farmer, and anyway, he talked like this, and you'd be like,
That's how they call it out.
he'd get to the point. Oh yeah, it'd be like, come on, come on, come on.
You
You can do it. But here's my point is that we're talking time has passed. We're talking generations have passed since the flood. and the Tower of Babel. Is it possible that dialects have broken off and at least it might have been the same root, but different? The sounds were different, words were different. And even-
It was like the time of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, what he had did is he created different dialects in each city-state. And so what happened is in the time where the Pentecost, where they all had to come into one place, they actually didn't really understand one another, although the base language was the same, but the dialects were different. And so when they came to that one place, okay, they really couldn't understand one another. And that's sort of like what you're actually saying as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to say now with that being said, that it wasn't necessarily that everybody spoke the same language, that it is that this sage has said that that it was a requirement of the power at the time that you must speak this language, you must do it this way, you must, so that you can gather in and be a part of the group in the mass. And so it was mandatory requirement of the dictating power for building of the city, the forging of the empire, and raising of the infamous power. That's what it means, one language. It was the dictator. It was that person in power. So the confusion of languages actually brought freedom because it was a reset to the way things had been before Nimrod, the hunter of men, had forced people to gather and do things his way, speak his way, act his way. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily true, but I hadn't really seen that before, and I thought that is a very interesting way to look at it. Because
What's happening today?
what do they want to do? One world government, one world religion, one world currency, one world dialect. So that sounds more like Nimrod, bringing everybody under one language, one religion, one power, than being different instead of, doing your own thing. So I found, looking at that in this day and this hour, I thought that was a really interesting perspective.
And that keeps people from being set apart.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. The world considers people useless eaters. That's what you are called. That is what the powers that be called. You and I are considered useless eaters.
Because we don't have the money and the power.
Yeah, that's the elite that are saying that.
That's the elite.
Those old carcasses need them.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. There should never be such a thing where you can die out of your job. That's ridiculous.
I was talking with Corey. Corey said that the numeric value that's given per person now is that you are worth $10,000. Every person's worth no more than $10,000. That's the value of human life.
Well, then we should get the carcasses out first.
That's right.
And spread the wealth.
Well, our social security numbers are asset numbers.
Asset numbers, yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. So,
They're not even thinking about their generation.
No, apparently not.
it's
Just selfish.
the world is messed up.
They are very
Really
selfish.
selfish.
Think about it though, a lot of those people, the one I'm thinking of, I'm not even sure they have kids, or
They do. Rosie has 5 children.
Who does?
And God knows she's got a lot of
Well, I'm
grandkids.
thinking of Elon Musk and Bill Gates. I don't think he's got.
What about you think about the Rothschilds?
He has kids.
Yeah.
But you think about the Rothschilds and the Queen and all of them, they all
They
are,
have children and stuff.
yeah, they have them, yeah. But the seed line's been, the DNA is messed up. And that's what all this is about.
They did it that way on purpose. They did it that way. They did that.
They did it to themselves, and I guarantee the protocol that's being demanded of the world, they don't take. I guarantee that, because they want a world of the elite and a world of everybody else.
There was a time at one particular hospital in New York, when my sister was at the age of giving birth, that they were, women would give birth to their children. The minority women would give birth to their children here on fire, the procedure, and they lay you in the belly. And then later the nurses take them away, clean them up, and then they would come back and tell the mother that for some unknown reason the baby passed.
They would take those
They
babies.
were taking everybody's babies. My sister, it got to a point where the women in minority groups wouldn't go to the hospital to have their babies. They would have midwives would come to their home and they would have their babies at home.
Yeah. Joy.
So I listened to a guy that was talking about the giants and the corruptness that was going on, and you know, those guys they were eating each other. They were so huge.
Yes, it
And
was
they were drinking of blood, and that was one of the reasons. That's one of the
fee fi fo
laws,
fum.
you know, is to not drink blood. That Yahweh gave that to Noah, because I didn't research that. You know, Noah had laws or whatever. I guess that's one, not to
The
drink
Lord's
blood.
law is not
But
to drink the life
whatever it
source,
is so.
which is the
So
blood.
here's the thing: is I read then in Matthew and Mark and how Yeshua said people are going to be eating and drinking as always, and it just hit me. Oh
Ooh,
my goodness. He's talking about it, and what are our elites doing that's coming out?
they drink the blood that they want the life
They're
source.
drinking the blood of the babies.
Yeah.
And
And
in
so what are we
Africa,
doing, eating and drinking and marrying?
That's good.
in
Well,
in
but God came out and
Africa,
said,
the women have to burn their
flesh
menstrual pads that they use, because that's how they track them, and they get them, and they found all these bodies of young, I guess it was both sexes, but they had no blood in their whole
When
bodies.
was this?
No blood and no organs.
When was this? When? Just
This was
recently?
this past, before we moved here, I seen that on the news. They found mass graves with young
Okay,
people
so
and
that's
had
what
no
you should-
blood
I
and
think
no
that's what he was
organs.
talking about. is
Isn't that
eating and
horrible?
drinking.
Eating and drinking. See, I had never thought of that, Joy, but that is a thought right there. Eating and drinking, because that is what you hear about. I mean, that they're wanting the power. They're also wanting the knowledge. Pastor John's talked to you guys about this before, about that stuff in the blood that would cause them to be able to basically take a trip to visit that other dimension, that
Yes.
cross that line and get that secret knowledge and bring it back. Yes,
One more
Liz.
thing is, these old rich people are trying to figure out a way that they can live forever.
Yeah.
And they figure they're doing experiments on getting the brain stems, but they need it from the babies while they're still alive.
Yes,
why
that's what
they're
I'm talking about,
signing to
yes.
have these babies killed at birth. That's after they get what they want, while the poor things are alive and don't know what's happening. I think that's the cruelest, most
Oh,
inhumane
terrible,
thing
terrible.
ever.
And I've heard that they are recycling people when they die into our food chain.
I've heard that too. It is
It's all agreed.
it is true. It's a true thing. And as what you said, Liz, about the having your baby in hospitals. Well, first off, I don't believe anybody should have their baby in a hospital anymore. I think you've got to have it at
It's
home.
crazy. You can't trust a doctor.
And
No.
it's not, I've heard of it happening with other races and communities as well. And it's just sad. It's no value of life. And it's all about distorting the seed. You drink the blood, you distort the DNA, and you mess with the seed. And it's all going back to the same thing. It is horrible. And if our eyes, here in the panhandle of Texas, we're somewhat protected from a lot of what is happening in other places, even in our nation.
Yeah.
But if we truly understood the things that were happening and knew of it, well, I don't want to know firsthand. It would hurt our hearts, and it would make our stomachs churn of things that are happening. I mean, I even think of things that are happening to young people and kids and babies. I mean, there's just so much, and it's pure evil. But
how
how,
much of that stuff is actually going through Amarillo because of I-40?
I was wondering who,
go
I
ahead.
shouldn't ask this, who took Marsha's place?
I don't know.
What
Well,
happened to his place?
Somebody did.
a lot of the
You know,
babies
somebody
that
did.
have,
It's still going on.
Oh, yes.
a lot of the babies that have come across the border, they say a lot of them are just, they don't know where they are.
Because they're being used for sacrifices, satanic sacrifices, rituals, et cetera, and besides the sex. It's for all of
money.
it.
People are
All-
getting paid for them. It's not that they're just being taken. I think that people are trading them and getting paid for it.
Yes.
Look,
But the Bible, the Yahweh says, you don't drink the blood out of even the animals, because it's the life source and you're not to drink it. And
Amen.
raw meat stuff, blood dripping out of it, you're not supposed to eat the blood of the animals. In Africa, there's tribes that live off the blood in the cow. They puncture holes in it and run it into a cup and drink it.
I'm sorry, it's making my
Or
stomach.
they
They show it right on TV. I watched it last week. I was like, Oh my
Yeah,
God!
well, and
And that's how they
National Geographic episode where they tried, they not only drained some of the blood out of the cow, but they mixed it with the milk.
No! And they drink it there, not uncooked.
Wow. All right. We will continue in a few minutes. Hey, what we're going to do, it's 4:00. Wait, you guys, wait. So we will have our service at 5 and it will, and we would love for you guys to join us. We're missing all of you who aren't there, Tracy and Rexana and
Chris and Janet,
and
Brenda.
and all of you guys who are there online with us right now. So anyway, I can't wait to see you. Hopefully we can see you soon. And to all our new friends, we are so glad that you've joined us today, and we're excited to be with you next time. So with that being said, we want to bless you guys. Father, we come before you in the name of Yeshua, and we thank you for this time together. We give you all glory and honor and praise, and bless everyone, and they're going out and they're coming in. And as we regather together again at 5:00, we praise you and exalt you in Yeshua's name. Amen and amen.
Yeah, that's what all the.
So hold on, guys.